Hi, I'm Adam Shepherd.
I'm Jane McCallion.
And you're listening to another episode of the ITPro Podcast. So, today is Fat Thursday, which is my new favourite holiday.
It's not really a holiday.
Well, it is technically a holiday in that it is a holy day in the traditional sense of the word. If you're not familiar with Fat Thursday, it is a Polish tradition which essentially revolves around eating as many donuts as humanly possible in the name of good luck.
Yeah, it's kind of, as far as I can tell, the Polish tradition, like Shrove Tuesday, but
with donuts?
And indeed the previous week. Did you know about it before today, or was it the Twitter trend that tipped you off?
No, I knew about it as of last week. Our newest addition to the ITPro team, Sabina Weston, introduced me to the tradition, and I immediately saw it as an excellent excuse to stuff my face full of donuts. So I will be doing that shortly after we finish recording.
Yeah, I think I'll be getting a donut on the way home as well.
Yeah, I'm essentially going to pick up a crate. So, delicious donuts aside, there is lots of delicious IT news this week. That is a very tortured transition, but we'll go with it. Yes, speaking of
deliciousness.
Yeah, speaking of sweet things, bees.
Yes, bees. They are my favourite insects, and the University of Sheffield has done some research into how bees navigate and seen if they can use AI to apply this to drones so that they can help navigate by the same kind of guideposts that bees use, so landscape and stuff. Although, when I first read this story, which was written by Roland Morcollier, I just can't get out of my head the idea of some drones doing like a waggle dance, which is the other way that they communicate.
That was exactly what I was thinking. It's just a really delightful image. I mean, of course, dancing drones is nothing new. If you've seen any of the drone displays that places in China and various other places all over the world have been using to substitute fireworks, dancing drones are in fact very impressive. And frankly, I think there's absolutely no reason not to replace all firework displays with drone displays. They're more environmentally friendly, they're more friendly to pets and whatnot, and they're just more entertaining. But going back to the topic of AI and bee drones, drone bees? Bee drones?
I think bee-inspired drones.
Bee-inspired drones. That sounds like a motivational poster. Bee-inspired. Yeah, it's a good use case for AI, I think, and also could help make drones a bit more useful, I guess, is the right word.
Yeah. I mean, like, kind of flying delivery drones has been a promised use case for drones since I was on, I think, PC Pro, which I talk about every so often. It's about 5 years ago when Google demoed their delivery thing. I think it was Google. It might have been Amazon, I'm afraid. That looked like Thunderbird 2.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, it's rad. You must see the video. If we can find the video, we'll link to it in the show notes. But yeah, I mean, part of the problem has been they can only, you have to program them and they can only do linear whatever. So being a bit more kind of able to determine where things are, kind of based on seeing, if you like, and interpreting the area a bit more intelligently. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
As a side note, we have had our first experience of drone delivery. HP used a drone to drop off the review unit of their latest Dragonfly laptop.
Oh, so they did, yes.
Yeah, which was very, very cool. Look out for a review of that going up shortly. The laptop, not the drone. But it was quite cool to actually see that in action.
Such a gimmick, but like a cool gimmick. Just because something's a gimmick doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. I think we can enjoy it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of things that are most certainly not gimmicks, Google has acquired yet another company, this time a mainframe company.
Yes, so this is the Dutch firm Cornerstone Technology, which provides tools and project management services for application and database migration. It's kind of interesting. It's very much your kind of where you sit around and get a little bee in your bonnet. Or back to the first story.
Not the breeze.
That is because this idea that mainframe is dead, it's old tech and stuff, but it's not, and it still underpins so much stuff. And as
many people have mainframes.
Yes, so many people have mainframes, and once again, it's the classic. The cloud has to run on something. And if the technology underpinning it is something that's been there forever, the mainframe still exists. It's just in somebody else's premises. So yeah, I think it's an interesting demonstration of that. It is kind of a migration and data management play, really.
Yeah,
fundamentally.
The stated use case for this technology, from Google's point, is making it easier for potential Google Cloud customers who have legacy, quote unquote, mainframe applications to migrate to Google Cloud with a shorter roadmap and a less painful migration. Well,
it's clearing that final hurdle, isn't it? There's always been the issue, like, how do you get legacy databases, just legacy stuff, into the cloud? And a lot of the reason why on-prem has remained is because of that.
And mainframes are notoriously not portable in the same way that a lot of x86 applications can be.
Yeah, and containers did help a bit with this, with lifting and shifting stuff to the cloud. So this is knocking down another barrier. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. It'll be interesting to see where whether any of the other big cloud players, especially Microsoft and Amazon, follow suit or kind of go, oh no, we've got this as well. So let's see where it goes. And finally, we are onto the story that Dell has sold RSA, its security business that it picked up as part of its 2015 acquisition of the EMC Federation.
Yeah, the company sold its security unit to a private equity consortium, Symphony Technology Group, for, what was it, $2 billion?
$2.075 billion, which is £1.6 billion.
So a lot of money. RSA, of course, long-standing history in the security space, developers of the RSA encryption algorithm and hosts of the RSA Conference, which is one of the biggest events in the security calendar.
Indeed, and is happening next week, in fact.
So that's going to be a very interesting show, I suspect.
Surprise! No questions, please.
Yeah, well, quite. There's going to be a lot of embattled PRs.
Yeah, I think. And it's one of my areas of interest is the channel. So I'd be interested as ever to see what this means for the channel, because there will have been, some integration at the point where EMC was bought.
Yes.
And so there will have to be de-integration, I guess is the word. And
disintegration? That makes it sound like they're melting it with laser beams.
Hopefully not disintegration. But it'll be interesting to see what that means for partners, whether they're just going to, whether you've got partners who are like MSSPs or something who are specialised in security rather than Dell. So, I don't think it's going to be a massive disruption, though. It wasn't subsumed into the business. RSA has always reminded me a bit of a security-flavoured VMware.
Kind of.
It's not separately owned, but it was never quite kind of like sucked in like everything else.
Yeah. It never really felt like part of the family in the same way that VMware and EMC did. They were both really natural fits with the rest of Dell's technologies.
Yeah.
Whereas RSA felt a little bit like an odd one out. It never really got mentioned too much at any of the conferences or events or anything. They never seemed to do a huge amount with it. So kind of divesting it kind of makes sense, I think, from a synergy perspective.
Indeed, and getting a nice chunk of cash to go with it.
Well, quite.
This isn't the end of Dell's security plays, though. So they sold off Sonic Wall a while ago. RSA is gone. So,
although it's worth remembering that through VMware they picked up Carbon Black for a good chunk of change. Yes, of course they
did, didn't they?
Not that long ago.
Yes, although that is, like you said, is VMware rather than Dell Technologies.
It's VMware rather than Dell, but the two companies are going to be integrating Carbon Black across the portfolio.
And there's also Dell SecureWorks is the other kind of long-standing part of Dell that is security as well.
Yeah, so very much not Dell getting out of the security game, but I think this indicates that the company's taking a much more focused approach to its security practice, which is no bad thing.
Yeah. We're going to take a short ad break now, but when we get back, we will be talking about whether or not we really need offices anymore. See you after the break.
Welcome back. As we mentioned before the break, this week we are going to be looking at offices and whether or not we still need them in the year of our Lord 2020. I mean, the rise of things like SaaS and, cloud tools in general, greater connectivity, free Wi-Fi, 4G, LTE, all those kinds of things. Do you even need a physical place where all of your employees come in every day and sit down and then do their work and then go home? Is that necessary?
I think the answer, actually, the short answer is yes.
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
No.
So the reason the short answer is yes is so I work very flexibly. I spend most of the week working remotely from home, do a bit of the flexible hours stuff, and I come into our central London offices twice a week. But I know, because I spent years as a freelancer where, I ended up going down the co-op to have interaction with another kind of flesh and blood human being, that offices serve a purpose as a hub for interaction. Sometimes it is easier to just go and talk to somebody. Sometimes things just kind of, some meetings, especially brainstorms and stuff, tend to work better, in my opinion, in person. So yeah, I don't think that just because we have the internet and the cloud and 5G and blah, that we can be all kind of like, well, it's time to turn all offices into flats now.
So I partially agree with that. So first of all, I think we don't need offices anymore. I think the vast majority of businesses are capable of running entirely remotely. Tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams and to a lesser extent email mean that you don't actually need to be in the same building as someone to collaborate with them and to work together effectively. Plus things like, video calls and, hangouts and all of this kind of stuff. It means you don't have to be in the same location to work together, and cloud-based file storage means that you can work together, you can share files and collaborate on projects with absolutely no friction from tech perspective.
I think that you're possibly at risk of taking our own situation where we are, I think if you wanted to break us down, effectively a services company, and looking at that, and sure, the services are the largest part of the UK economy anyway.
Yeah, vast majority.
But there are other industries and other verticals and stuff where you're going to need to have an office, even if it's a small one.
So like what?
Healthcare, manufacturing, transport.
Well, no, manufacturing and healthcare and all of those things. You will need buildings. If you're in manufacturing, you'll need a factory and a warehouse and whatnot. But do you need an office? Do you need a physical space where everyone can be in the same place and working together? I
mean, I'd say from a healthcare point of view, yeah. You need administrative offices. A lot of stuff, especially in the NHS, is still done by paper.
Well, yes, but it doesn't have to be, my point. Well, that's...
As somebody who went into a hospital unit as an outpatient and their servers went down, literally about 5 minutes after I arrived, all the electronic admission system just kaput completely, and they had to revert to paper. Now, if everything was remote and everybody's records were sort of completely, they couldn't access anything. I mean, it was a bit of a nightmare.
Yes, and there is always the risk of outages with cloud-based services. But my point is, there is no absolute imperative need for things to be non-cloud. Like, you can argue that it's more reliable to have analog systems as a backup, which is a case you could very well make, but it's not essential in the same way that it was, even 5-10 years ago. And again, for the vast majority of the UK economy, which is primarily services-based, those companies have even less reason to have an office.
So I think if you're working on the services side, then sure, you probably don't. There are certain verticals where you do. But then, like I said, there's the question of whether, you do want some kind of central hub where people can, speak to each other, like actually meet up. Especially if you discover, say, that, you're doing a kind of departmental presentation and for some reason the dial-in just will not work.
Okay, yeah, but again, that's predicated on technology not working and having in-person interactions as a backup.
Yeah, but again, you still need a location for that backup to happen.
Well, no, but my point is, you don't need, aside from belt and braces backups, the 3Bs, which, is good, and it's always good to have fallbacks, it's not essential. You can be 100% remote as a company and still function as effectively, barring outages, function as effectively as you would if you had a physical location.
I guess potentially the answer to my point is flexible offices.
Yes, I was just about to bring this up, actually. I think by flexible offices, I assume you mean places like WeWork and other such co-working spaces.
R.I.P. Yes, co-working spaces. There are a lot of places like WeWork. There are lots and lots of others. That, here in London, there are quite a few sort of places where you can hire meeting rooms and that kind of thing. If you need to, and they're pretty nice. So there is that aspect of it as well, definitely.
Yeah, unless you need AV facilities or you're having a super secret confidential meeting, there is no reason why most business meetings can't be conducted over a coffee or a drink or a meal.
I can tell you haven't had any lunch yet.
There's something of a theme emerging today.
Largely, we've been speaking here about enablers, the technology, the fact that co-working spaces, flexible offices exist. And I think it's also worth thinking about motivators. So for me, the motivator to go in the office is human interaction with other people, but also motivators to stay away, or motivators to do more remote working, to not have an office. There's questions of carbon footprint effectively. So whether that is, the literal carbon footprint of running an office, you got the lights and the heat and all that kind of thing to take into account, plus stuff like waste disposal and all that kind of thing. By not having an office, you can probably reduce that. And then you've also got questions of transport, in fact. You don't have to travel as much. However, that travel is done, whether that is by car or by bus or, most of our trains, I believe, are still diesel. Those aren't, that run on electrified rails and, the London Underground and stuff, you still have to draw your electricity from somewhere. So if you can reduce the amount of commuting that's going on, you reduce the amount of energy that's being used. Now, we spoke about it last week. Still ongoing with people pulling out of conferences because of coronavirus. Infection control is a way, a reason to stay at home. That's kind of more of a quarantine thing. But kind of writing this a bit large, do you think that we could ever see effectively, virtual conferences that are good?
Yes. So So a lot of people have been bringing this up in the wake of MWC's cancellation, particularly. A lot of people have been talking about, well, do we even need trade shows like MWC anymore anyway, given that, live streamed press conferences and product announcements and whatnot are now so commonplace as to be pretty much the norm in most cases. And, is a big trade show like MWC a bit of a relic of the past? And I think that trade shows will still continue to have some kind of place. I think what a lot of people overlook about shows like MWC, going back to your point, Jane, is the opportunities it affords for networking and for meeting new people, particularly new partners, new potential sales leads, new potential suppliers.
Yeah, I mean, you and I go to conferences, and I normally manage to make at least some time to go down on the show floor and mill around a bit, see what's going on, and there's
pick up some new socks.
Yeah. Girls got to get t-shirts from somewhere.
Well, you say that. I am currently wearing my Pure Storage socks. One of my large, expansive collection of vendor branded socks. Vendors, feel free to send any branded socks you may have in my direction.
I don't have any vendor branded socks because my feet are too small.
I can highly recommend them.
And what with me being a lady woman and all. But yeah, I think I also kind of go mill around and have a little look, have a little talk, because there are certain companies that is how I first came across them, actually.
Well, yeah, and as we mentioned last week, there are a lot of companies who are too small, really, to get much traction outside of MWC, so they kind of rely on being able to kind of pick up extra publicity and be able to kind of draw more attention to themselves by being part of MWC. Yeah,
literally just catching people's eyes who have. Well, I think most people at conferences have slightly more spare time than we do.
Well, quite.
Yeah, who are kind of slightly more invested in spending time on the show floor, which is who they really want to be speaking to anyway, not journos.
Well, quite.
As much as we may wish to speak to them.
So, with all of this in mind, I don't think that we need offices. I don't think they're necessary. However, I think we want offices. I think offices are quite important for mental well-being. As you said, if you're entirely remote, it can be very easy to find yourself just spending all of your time at home alone, not really seeing people. And also, communicating over things like Slack or email or Teams is fine and good, but a lot of the time you lose the just casual interpersonal connections. How was your day? Are you doing anything nice at the weekend? That's a nice t-shirt, etc. that you get in person, which you don't really get in the same way over text-based or even video-based remote communication methods.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with text-based as well is that there's always the issue of there's no tone in text.
Well, yeah, but in fairness, that's what GIFs and emojis were invented for.
Yes, true. But whenever I have to do something that, if I'm writing something and it could come across bad, or kind of like I'm having a go, or I'm just being a terrible person to someone, bullying and stuff, then I'm more inclined to, pick up the phone if I'm not around, or go and just kind of go and talk to that person. And, I have also historically, when I was in the office more, found that going and talking to people is a great motivator for getting them to actually pay attention to you and do the thing that you would like them to.
I think also it's worth pointing out that, as we were saying earlier on in the show, some companies still have mainframes and physical infrastructure and on-premise infrastructure. And the point of on-premise is that you need a premise to keep it on.
Yes.
So if you're entirely remote, that means co-locating or, hosting it in someone else's data center.
It's kind of slightly going off track, but it's a bit like driverless cars. I know.
How so?
Well, So
Sure, you're working.
Nicole Kobe, who is on PC Pro, our sister magazine, and also is sometimes writes for us as well, was talking on Twitter the other day about effectively self-driving cars. That they don't think about buses and stuff. It's all about cars and getting the same amount of people into cars, and so the problem of traffic and that isn't going to go away. And I think it's kind of human beings struggle to think outside of their current existence. So it is very hard to conceive of a world where nobody really goes to the office anymore, and actually even maybe flexible working spaces are not as popular as they are right now, because we've kind of managed to transition out of that mindset. And I think, maybe perhaps for me, perhaps for the rest of our listeners, it's difficult to conceive of a world completely without offices, just because that's all that I've known really in my working life, apart from the bit where I was working at home and it was sad.
I think we're going to see more remote working and more kind of flexible working as a kind of standard.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think within, the next couple of years, working from home, at least for a portion of your working time, is going to be just an accepted standard for businesses. Yeah,
I 100% agree. And, it's just massive quality of life, and, also you're not doing all the transport thing.
I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think offices are going away forever. Ever. But I think we're certainly well on our way to drastically reducing the amount of people that are in the office, quote unquote, at any given time.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for this week, unfortunately, but you can find links to everything that we have spoken about today in the show notes, and even more on our website, www.itpro.co.uk.
You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can subscribe to the IT Pro newsletter for a daily dose of IT news in your inbox.
Don't forget to subscribe to the ITPro Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher or wherever else you get podcasts to never miss an episode. And if you could leave us a rating and a review, that would be really helpful in getting other people to discover us.
As ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at podcast@itpro.co.uk.
Until next week, goodbye.
Bye.